Good morning, folks. Now, in this conversation for GOAT that we keep changing over and over, I know MMA is the sport of what have you done for me lately, and there's no greater example than Oliveira beating Dariush. You know, not that long ago, Islam, number 6, was told he would have no chance against Oliveira. He hasn't earned it, blah, blah, blah. And Islam just cleaned his clock. And then you have and then Oliveira was done. He was washed up. They were calling him the GOAT before Islam. And then they're like, one loss. He's washed up. He's done. He comes back and beats Dariush, who was on the end of a 8-fight win streak. But nobody really recognized. The last 3 wins were all split decisions over, again, guys you would have to Google to know who the hell they are. And boom, Oliveira's the GOAT again. So, but I'm talking about Jones and Khabib. For some reason, those two keep coming up. And yes, Jones has way more title fights. But some of those were wars. Some were very controversial. All the failed tests. Khabib, yes, much shorter at 3 title defenses, but he didn't ever lose a round. You know, some people say, "Oh, Conor beat him." No, that's one judge gave him the round. The other 2 gave it with the rest of the world. So, but what I want to bring up is the records that I keep seeing this meme, the combined records. Well, that's great, but it doesn't matter if you won 20 fights 10 in a row 10 years ago if you've been back and forth and you lost 10 of your last 15 before you fight for the title, which happens. And so everyone said, look at the record. I want to look at the record, how many wins they had coming into their fight with Jones and Khabib. I looked at him. So he took the belt from Hua, who was on a streak of 1. He beat Jackson, who was on a streak of 2. One was a very, very, very controversial decision over Machida, who was next and had a win streak of 1 against a 48 or 49-year-old Randy Couture. Evans, here we go, a win streak of 4. The only stoppage in there being Tito, who at the time I believe was 1-4-1 in his last 6. So it's not just about who you beat, it's what guys did you beat at what point in their career before going to Jones and Khabib, right? The ladder, the pyramid, spiderweb, whatever. Belfort was on a 2-fight win streak, both at middleweight. Sonnen was on a 1-fight losing skid at middleweight. Gus, hey, here we go. A 6-fight win streak, 1 over Hua. There you go. And I think most of us agree he beat Jones. Regardless of what Wikipedia says, everybody in the world except for 2 of the 3 guys sitting around the octagon thought Gus won that fight. Glover, that was a legit win. 5 consecutive wins in the UFC. 20 total if you count his fights outside the UFC. No excuses there. Well, maybe because as many failed tests as he has. I'm sure the times he failed weren't the only times. Those are just the times he got caught, right? Because now you got DC, who had 4 wins, 2 at light, the 2 finishes, both at light heavyweight. One was over a debuting Pat Cummins. The other was over a Dan Henderson, who was 1-3 in his last 4 and really showing his age. And then, of course, drugs afterwards, suspended. He comes back. He beats OSP, who was on a win streak of 1 by decision over Cavalcanti. And then he failed again for performance-enhancing drugs. He comes back, beat a red-hot Cormier coming off 4 wins. But again, PEDs. Comes back again. So that fight was scrubbed. He comes back, he fights Gus, who was on a 2-fight win streak. And again, had PEDs in his system. And this is weird because, so he had drugs for OSP. He gets suspended, but the victory still stands on his record and over OSP. He comes back, he beats DC, has more steroids in his system. They scrub that victory from his record. He comes back. Before the fight, he's got steroids in his system, and they still let him fight Gus, and it still counts. I don't understand these rules. You want to say? I know you're going to say, Dusty, he had picograms. Picograms are small. Look, the guy handed in a receipt. Said, look, boner pills with tamoxifen. You saw it, see? And on that same receipt was an order for tamoxifen in its pure form. So take the picograms and get the F out of here with that. So he beat Smith, who was on a 3-fight win streak, including Evans, who had lost his last 4 going into the fight with Smith. He then beat Santos, who after going 10-5 at middleweight, pulled Masvidal and Whitaker, said, I'm tired of cutting all this weight. I'm going to fight at light heavy. Did win 3 in a row. I believe he knocked them all out. And then he beat Jones on one leg. I'm sorry, I know the judges said it, but he won that fight. At least it was very close. Reyes 6-0. Again, regardless of what the judges said, he won that fight. And then he got knocked out 3 times afterward. And then he moves up to heavyweight. He fights Gon, who was on a 1-fight win streak over a street fighter. That gives, out of the 15 guys he fought, they had a combined 37 wins coming into their fight with Jones at the appropriate weight class, which gives an average of 2.5 wins before when Jones fought them. They were on 2.5 fight win streaks before he fought them, and 4 failed drug tests. Now, Khabib, his first title eliminator, people forget about this, but he beat RDA, who was 5-0 in his last 5, including a stoppage over Prime Cowboy Cerrone. But unfortunately, Khabib blew his knee out. He was going to fight Bendo all those years ago. He was going to fight Bendo, but unfortunately blew his knee out in practice. Was sidelined for 2 years with the surgery and all the rehab. RDA, in his absence, goes on to win another 5 in a row, including Bendo, including Diaz, stealing the title from Pettis, and beating Cerrone again. So in that run, RDA was actually 10-1. That one hiccup was Khabib. Conor was only on a 2-fight win streak, but this was still champ Conor. This was still as good as it was going to get for Conor. Poirier, he was on, also like RDA, he had a 10-1 streak. That one hiccup was Khabib. Johnson. He won 5 in a row, lost to Johnson, came back, put 5 together, beating Miller, Pettis, Gaethje, Alvarez, and he ended the streak of Holloway's 13 wins. So think about that. Holloway was on a 13-fight win streak, including stoppages over Oliveira, Ortega, Pettis, and 2 over Aldo, and that streak was ended by Poirier, who then had his streak ended by the undefeated Khabib. And then we got Justin Gaethje, had a short 4-fight win streak, including knockouts over Barboza, Cerrone, and Tony. Once again, Tony had a 12-fight win streak with, 8-9 stoppages? That was ended by Gaethje, and then that streak was ended by an undefeated Khabib. So, yes, 16 total wins between these 4 coming in to their fight with Khabib. Gives an average win streak of 4 before meeting Khabib. So, is it Khabib or Khabib? I don't know. And, hey, why not? While I'm thinking about it, why don't I just throw his little brother out there, Islam, whose 2 title fights were against Oliveira, coming off 11 wins, so he smoked. And then Volkanovski was a close split decision, who was riding 12 fights? So far in Islam actually in 2 title fights has a better average of opponent, because his 2 opponents so far, Oliveira and Volk, had a combined 23 wins before facing Islam, which is an average of 12.5 fight win streaks, beating Khabib even by 3 and beating Jones by 6 times as many wins. So, yeah, if you want to, I know, you're cherry picking looking at the record. Well, yes, I am, because like I said, okay, TJ Dillashaw ending the 32-fight win streak of Renan Barão, that was more impressive. And I love Aljo, but it's still more impressive than Aljo being the 8th guy to beat him went out of his last 9, right? I think he lost 11 of his last 12, and, Aljo was just like the 8th or 9th guy in that streak of 12 losses. So that is less impressive than, you know what I'm saying. All right, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Am I stupid? Drop it in the comments. Is Jones still the GOAT despite all the thumb to the eye? is in the steroids, repeated steroid offenses, or is the guy less fights? Sure, but I mean, you got to think in all his years in the UFC, Khabib sat out like 4 years with injuries. He would have gotten the title shot in his 7th fight instead of his 10th, had it not been for 2 knee operations. Anyway, that's all I got for today. You have a nice day.